Well, thank you, Sam. Today we're talking about the risk assessment portion to your compliance management program. That is, your compliance management program will include things like training and monitoring. This is the risk assessment portion that you really have to do first, because if you don't assess the potential risk, you do not know where you need to allocate your resources. Maybe you need additional personnel. You need more time in certain areas. You need software. You need training. You need machinery of some sort, more computers, if you don't do this risk assessment. So this is the core to any compliance management program. And whether you're a compliance officer, you're the risk officer, or you're just someone in charge, not just, but you're someone who's in charge of a specific area, you can use this all the way through. Because let's say you're in loan ops and you want to know now, all right, what areas are most critical under maybe Reg Z or RESPA or Reg B, Equal Credit Opportunity Act. You're in the deposit side and you're looking at Reg CC, funds availability, or Reg DD, truth in savings. And so you can use these to do your own risk assessment, and then you have a good, solid map that will show you where you need to put your resources. So let's talk about this. Well, starting with that, we're looking today at 5 points to your risk assessment. You have to identify where your risks are. You have to measure that risk. You can't just say, yep, got a risk. Well, is it a low risk? Is it a moderate risk? Is it high risk? Then you need to prioritize. And so obviously those higher risk, those are going to be a higher risk, meaning I need to throw more resources at them. And so we'll talk about those in a minute. You need to control. That means to mitigate your risk. So, yes, it's one thing to say we have a lot of risk coming up in lending compliance because of Dodd-Frank, which compliance consultants jokingly call that. Dodd-Frank is the Compliance Consultants Job Security Act, although it's beginning to make us crazy too. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you monitor to make certain that your risk assessment is true. Is there something that we need to tweak? Your risk assessment, whether it be for consumer laws and regulations or Bank Secrecy Act or any other type of risk assessment, is not static. You don't do it once, put it on a shelf, and say, boom, we're done. This is a living, breathing document because it's going to change with different scenarios. So let's start with the first, and let's talk about identifying your risk. And why are we doing this? Well, I want you to understand that whether you're doing this, you're the compliance officer, you're the chief risk officer, you're in senior management, and you're going, why do we have to go through this? Well, first off, the exam procedures for your compliance management system, it specifically states it considers the extent and frequency that the board, so this always gets their attention, assesses and monitors the risk associated with the bank's consumer compliance activities. So your federal regulators they each have their own exam pieces there for compliance management system, and depending on how large your financial institution is, how much we have in the way of, compliance management, and I just lost my train of thought. I hate that. But they want to make certain that indeed we are assessing and monitoring that. So that's the first thing you want to use, and you want to remind your board is that we have to have this assessment that's done periodically. And they need to be involved some way. Does that mean that they are in there working diligently? Oh, heaven forbid. We don't want them anywhere near it. But they have to be aware that we need this. It's a financial institution. And they have to be aware how important it is so that they can sign off on the allocation of those resources. We need to present this to them. They need to be involved, which means we need to be certain that when we, the either chief risk officers, compliance officers, whomever you are, that we're presenting this to the board or the designated committee, might be an audit committee, compliance committee, whatever it is, that we address that within the minutes. Also, still why, this determines whether management recognizes, controls, and monitors compliance risks. So this is still within that compliance management system exam procedures. So they're going to determine whether, first off, that the board is involved. Also, does management recognize, control, and monitor compliance risks? So we've got to have a way of being able to prove that. You know, throughout compliance, it's so different from democracy. You're guilty until you prove yourself innocent when it comes to compliance. And so we have to have lots of documentation. We have to have ways to show that we're doing these. And, of course, through all of this, the proof is in the pudding. So you might have absolutely the best risk assessment. You might have the best program in place. And then either the examiners or your auditors come in and they find all types of violations. Well, that means that we're not really monitoring. The system is not working. So when I get questions about, you know, what is, do you know of any good testing systems for the employee's compliance knowledge? Yeah, it's called an audit or an exam. The proof is in the pudding. I want to see how well it's done. Test taking to me is futile. Some people are good test takers. I want to see how they do in real life. That's what matters. They could have made 100 on that Reg Z or RESPA test, but then they made enough errors that I have to reimburse $30,000 to a customer. That 100 in the test didn't mean a thing. Still on why we're identifying compliance risk, this, again, is from the Compliance Management Handbook, is the current and prospective adverse impact on potentially on earnings. Because remember, I just mentioned that if we are having problems with personnel in disclosing between the good faith and the HUD-1, or maybe right of rescission, or not including all of the prepaid finance charges under Reg Z, maybe we have under Reg DD that we are not disclosing things correctly, so we have potential UDAP, don't want to go there, then that's going to impact earnings, because what we've earned, we've got to pay out. Our capital potentially and market viability. You know, if your financial institution is had enough problems, it's going to impact both. Either someone's looking to buy you, if you have people who are looking to invest in you. There have been financial institutions that have gone completely under for having some types of lax compliance issues, as well as your impact on investor, customer, and regulator relationships. You know, if the examiners come in and they see that you had maybe a bare bones compliance management program and they found some violations, they're going to treat you a lot more stringently than they would if they'd seen you'd had a very good program, that you happen to have one hole over here. Somebody had a brain cramp, we had a software update, something didn't get done right. They're going to be a little more lenient, usually, if you had a good program and something went awry in a short period of time. Now, you won't get that grace if this software update was 16 months ago and it wasn't identified till the examiners came in, because that means that part of your program's not working. But let's say it was the last 2 months and you hadn't had a chance to look at it. So that regulator relationship is very important. You want to have a good relationship so that you can have a little more grace when that eventually you're going to stub your toes. Somebody's going to do something. Still on why? Compliance risk, it's a risk that could expose the institution to fines, and so you can have CMPs for some of these, you know, particularly when you get into some of the UDAP. Boy, and it's amazing what can be thrown in there. That's the regulators' new play pretty. Reg DD, they took away a couple of years ago the civil money penalties within that, that consumer really couldn't sue you over some of the Reg DD truth in savings. Maybe there was a difference in the disclosures, what was disclosed as an overdraft fee and what was actually charged. However, it can be considered deceptive. And so when we get into that, oh my goodness. I know some of my bankers were so excited. They said, oh, look, they took these penalties away. Well, you know what? They never take anything bad away from the bankers without replacing it with something worse. And so sure enough, that's where it can go, is to UDAP. So whereas there were penalties under Truth in Savings, those were absolutely